I'm Wendy Murdoch, and this is Webinars with Wendy. We are continuing to do a webinar series, and I have moved to this new format on Kartra. I'm really excited about it because it simplifies the sign-up process on your side and on my side. So I'm really excited about that. And this is our first one. So if we have some technical glitches, just hang in there. Thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, my guest is Dr. Lydia Gray, a dear friend, and she is so informative on her topics. I learned so much from Dr. Gray, and I'm really looking forward to this one because with the kind of weather that we're having, I'm sure that this could be a bigger problem for a lot of people. So welcome, Lydia. Thank you so much for doing this, the first webinar on Kartra.
And the reason I am so passionate about all the topics you and I picked for me to give is because I have had horses over the years that have had them. So I learned all this, not just for my clients, but for my own horses. So I'm going to hit the button and see if it advances. Look at that.
Yay. Hey, can you just go back to the first slide for a second? Because I have a question.
I don't know. Let me try this button. Yes, I can.
Okay. So I can say tying up, but that other word above tying up, I don't know that I can say.
Well, I'll give you my cheat. So when I say it, I say rhabdomyolysis. That's how you pronounce it. Rhabdomyolysis. When I spell it, like if I'm writing it or typing it, I have to cheat and say rhabdomyolysis.
Okay.
Because then I don't get the Y's and the O's in the right place unless I say rhabdomyolysis. But what it means is, let's just pick some parts. So lysis means destruction. And myo is the Latin term for muscle. And then rhabdo, it tells you what kind of muscle. So we're talking about the skeletal muscle in this case, the muscle that you control. It's voluntary, not the smooth muscle. This is the striated muscle. The ones that move your bones.
Because when you sent me the title and I saw that, I knew I wouldn't know how to say it.
So hopefully we're going to get through all these things tonight. But my purpose, my agenda, I guess, is I want people to understand when they leave here. I want them to understand it. And the purpose isn't to get through my agenda and to get through the PowerPoint. It's to teach people about this issue and what to look for and what to do, what not to do, and just to make life better for them and their horses. Okay, so then this is me many years ago. This is my off-the-track thoroughbred distinct leader, and he is the reason I know a lot about tying up, because this horse tied up, I don't know how often he tied up at the track, but when I got him, it was probably twice a month at least until I got it figured out.
Wow.
So he was very good about it, but I really felt bad for him. So what is it? The simple definition is just, it's a syndrome, and a syndrome means it has many causes. Muscle stiffness, muscle pain, and muscle cramping, key here, associated with exercise. And I'm going to show you a flow chart soon that explains there's exertional, which is a fancy word for exercise, movement, right? Exert yourself, rhabdomyolysis, and there's non-exertional rhabdomyolysis. So there's muscle damage that is associated with exercise, and there are muscle damage, muscle conditions, disorders that are not associated with exercise. And so one of those non-exertional rhabdomyolysis conditions would be an HYPP. It can happen with the onset of exercise, but it can also happen without exercise as a trigger. That is, it has other triggers than exercise. So we're going to try to show this video. I don't know if it'll work, and it's one of those annoying ones just from YouTube where you have to watch the ad first.
Okay.
So, and if I have the little option to make it bigger, at the bottom, I will. If you can't hear it, let me know, and I'll see if I can push a button and make it so. So here, it's very short, but I just wanted, for people who have not seen a horse tying up, this is important to see. Here we go. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's tiny, but we can see it.
Okay. I don't see an option to make it bigger.
It's okay. Horses in a very strange stance and pawing.
Yeah, he's parked out. Would you say
Yep.
parked out? Okay.
Yep, for
And
sure.
notice that, so he's frustrated, he's anxious, but it's only his front legs are moving. Now watch this. Let's go, buddy. So
Oh,
I
wow.
call that reluctant to move, right? So it's been diagnosed for you. It's tying up. I'm ignoring all of this stuff. There was another part of the video, and there he is better. There was a part of the video where he actually walked him, and you could see short strides, but apparently that is gone now. But there was a little bit. The point is, you could see he was stuck, and when he did ask to be moved, he took little bitty, teeny tiny steps. His hindquarters, if you could feel them, were like concrete. So let me see.
And I'm sure if people really wanted to see more videos of what it looks like, they can just Google tying
That's
up
right.
videos.
Yep. So you may be familiar with this for lots of other terms. There's Monday morning sickness, and that came from the draft horse world. Azoturia, setbass, cording, myoglobinuria. Fun word. Remember we said myo means muscle. Myoglobin is a muscle protein, and then urea means in the urine. So when horses tie up and they have myolysis, muscle damage, the muscle cells burst open and release what's inside of them. And myoglobin, related to hemoglobin, carries red blood cells. It shows up in the urine. So myoglobinuria was one of the early names of this condition.
Azoturia is a word that I've heard before.
Yeah. Cording was the one that was new to me. So I stole this from somewhere, I forget where, and I just wanted to show you that if you start at the top, do I have a cursor? Hang on. Oh, here. Okay. If you start at the top with rhabdomyolysis, and then we talked about there being exertional and non-exertional, right? Because you got to break it down if you're going to diagnose and treat it. And so we're going to go to this side and stick with the exertional rhabdomyolysis. There's sporadic and there's chronic. Sporadic just means happens once or once in a while, occasional. Chronic means happens again and again. It's a long-standing thing. There are actually 4 kinds of chronic exertional rhabdomyolyses. One is this recurrent exertional rhabdomyolysis, RER. And this flow chart isn't quite right because the polysaccharide storage myopathy, PSSM, there's type 1, type 2, and then there's a couple more. I think there's 5 now. But it gives you an idea that here's muscle damage, and it can be associated with exercise or it cannot be associated with exercise. Is that as clear as mud?
Yep. Nope, I got that.
Right. So let's just focus on, then for me it was the left side of the graph, sporadic and chronic. Here's the chronic ones. So you can have PSSM1 type 1, PSSM type 2. Malignant hyperthermia is a quarter horse genetic disease. Myofibrillar myopathy, seen mostly in Arabians, some warmbloods, and then recurrent exertional rhabdomyolysis. So we're going to focus on sporadic and recurrent. Those are the 2 classic tying ups. Traditional, typical. Okay. So let's just focus on sporadic. Like I said, it's a one-time or occasional episode, and that's because it's caused by a temporary problem in muscle cells. And Wendy, you alluded to this earlier by saying with the heat and humidity we're having, there's probably a lot of sporadic exertional rhabdomyolysis occurring this summer. Horses that never tied up and probably never will next year and never will again But this year, because it's in the 1 teens in Phoenix, heat stress is triggering them. But the biggest trigger for sporadic ER is when you push a horse to exercise beyond what you have conditioned him for. So if you have, like I've got those 2 little minis that I think I've got at the end of this talk, if I've been conditioning them just for combined training, which is dressage and cones. There's a show this weekend that people are trying to talk me into going to. It's dressage and cones in a marathon, a condensed marathon. It's only 1.5 miles, like, what is that? 3 kilometers? But I haven't been conditioning them for that. And it's going to be 90, and then it's also humid here, and going farther than they've gone before. And it's Wisconsin, so it's hilly. They could easily have a sporadic tying up episode because I'm asking them to work beyond what they're fit for. And it's hot. And bad me, I've not been giving them electrolytes or salt. I don't own them, so I haven't been analyzing their hay and pasture and making sure they're getting their vitamins and minerals. Look at this one, though. This is interesting. The research has shown that the horses that have respiratory disease, specifically flu or rhino, they're at risk for occasional tying up. I think it might be because of stress, as we'll see in the next one. So the important thing to take home with sporadic is that it's a temporary problem. Another way to say that is it's due to an extrinsic defect, meaning something outside the horse's control. Well, the horse doesn't have any control of anything, right? It's outside the horse. It's not his muscles. It's not genetics. It's not anything he did wrong. It's he was conditioned poorly, or it's too hilly, or it was too hot, or he didn't get the right nutrition, but it was something external, extrinsic. What that means is it can occur in anybody, any age, breed, sex, discipline, anybody. So that's why every single person who is handling a horse needs to be able to recognize tying up, because it can happen to anybody. Ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay. Then let's come to the one that is the most complicated, complex, worrisome, troublesome. And that's the tying up that occurs repeatedly. Like my horse that I showed you earlier, at least twice a month. And it was very frustrating because it takes time once you have an episode for the muscle enzymes that are released when the muscle cells burst and lyse to come down to normal levels. It takes time for the muscles not to be sore. And so you lose training, and then you have to build the training back up. But this is different from the sporadic in that it's an intrinsic defect. Now there's something wrong with the horse. And in the ones that the researchers have figured out what is wrong, it's an inherited, so genetic problem with the way that muscles use calcium. Another way to say that is it's an abnormality in intracellular, in the muscle cells, calcium regulation. Different from the sporadic, this is triggered by exercise, stress, or the combination of exercise and stress, and nutrition plays a huge role, nutrition or diet. This one's mainly seen in the thoroughbred and standardbred racehorses, as well as Arabs. And the classic case is the very nervous, the high-strung, hot, young 2-year-old thoroughbred filly that just goes into race training. There's some statistics that show at the track or in training, 2-year-olds, there's more of this kind of tying up in 2-year-olds than 3-year-olds. And there's more of this RER in 3-year-olds than 4-year-olds. And in 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds. So the younger you are, the more likely you are to show this kind.
Any reason for that?
I was just going to say, don't ask me why.
Okay.
I don't know if they have figured that part out yet, except that because stress is a huge component of why horses show this. It could be that the younger horses are under more stress. I mean, being broke, being worked with other horses, going from their, beautiful pastures to the racetrack, and they didn't. This is the first time they've moved from pastures to being in a stall 24/7. I mean, big changes from birth to 2-year-old year. That's my guess.
Yeah, that's probably reasonable.
So this is the part that I want everybody to screenshot or write down or come back and watch again. But these are the signs. So I titled this "How to Recognize It in Your Own Horse" if you're out trail riding someday. But you know what? You should also learn to recognize it in somebody else's horse. So you can give them the advice: stop, don't move your horse, get off. So let's start with muscle stiffness, and that's the parking out, like that horse did. It kind of looked like he was stretching out as if to urinate, right?
Yeah.
But then the pawing didn't go with urination. And also, when they urinate, don't they stretch out their back and their front, kind of like a upside down V? This horse was pretty normal in front, and it was just the back end that got stuck. So that's why I have the hindquarters become locked up. And then when the gentleman turned the horse, you could kind of see he's still stuck there to the ground, but he's like, I gotta move. And he moved like a half a hoof. So he was going to walk on in half a hoof increments. The next one is they have elevated heart and respiratory rates. Now they might have that from the work you just did. But if you've stopped the horse, you're like, something's wrong. Let's stop and check our horses. And after a few minutes, the heart and respiratory rates don't come down, means the horse is in pain or he's anxious about something, he's stressed. The next one, the middle one, is the reluctance to move, or maybe they can't move. If a horse can't move, and it's not a behavior thing, like there's a place my horse goes every day, and I try to walk. Well, it's the one barn that has a really nice breeze in it. When he gets in there, he's just like, and he stops. He just wants to stop for a minute and just get the air. But you can tell, and when I ask him to move, he doesn't. It's not because his hind legs, it's because this part. So, but in general, if the horse doesn't want to move and it's not behavioral, don't force them. Don't get the whips out. If you're able to touch the muscles, and remember, they're going to be sore, they're hard. Because they're cramped. And I don't know if you've ever had a cramp or a trotty horse yourself, and you reach down and you try to massage it. You can feel it, right? It's like there's a tennis ball in your leg. So the last one then is sweating and being anxious, and we saw that horse pawing. I will tell you the story of this horse. That's the horse that you saw in that first picture. Isn't he lovely?
Yeah, he's gorgeous.
Plus I'm partial to base. One of the mini episodes that he had that I'll never forget was he had never been turned out with other horses in his life until I got him. And the first time, I think, Wendy, I might have told you this story, but for our viewers, I will tell again. I took him to a barn in Indiana, and I had 2 horses, one who was very sappy and leader. And we had him in a round pen that was in the pasture for 2 weeks, sort of getting the horses could come up and introduce themselves. And then one day we all decided it's time. So unfortunately, the owners of the barn, they let the horses out first, and it was one of those long, skinny pastures, and they let the horses go to the back of the pasture. And then they let my two out. Buzz, Buzz, the other one, went out and moseyed down there like he was skiing down a hill, it was no big deal. Leader, having no social skills and being a really fast racehorse, he put it in fifth gear and 40 miles an hour went down the pasture. And the horses, they heard him coming, right? And they lifted up their head. They were all staying together in a herd grazing. But they're like, he'll stop. He hit them like a bowling ball.
Oh, no.
Scattered horses everywhere. Nobody get hurt, but I'm like, oh boy. So the next time I moved him, I'm like, okay, he doesn't know how to play well with others. It's not that he is mean or aggressive. He just has no clue. So we were very careful about picking his partners, and we found somebody who he was good with. And the first couple times we turned him out, the other lady and me went out with lunge whips to stand there in case anybody was stupid, and it was all great. So then we thought, well, let's turn him out with actually the gelding herd. It's going well. We'll turn him out with this buddy, so he has a friend. And this is where excitement and movement combine to make horses tie up. Because what happened was, turned him and his buddy out, the rest of the herd came over to investigate, and they sort of, surrounded them. And he started like trotting around, head up, tail up. And then I could watch his steps get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And pretty soon he was stuck. So he was stuck out there, and all the horses converged on him.
Oh, no.
He couldn't move. Well, so, I went out and saved him, but then we had to bring all the horses, move him out, because I had to get him back to a stall and start treating. But that just goes to show you that it's movement and stress, anxiety, excitement that combines to be a trigger for tying up for these horses that have the genetic intrinsic form. That's very important in the prevention and management of the disease. The wheels are spinning, right?
Yep.
Because there's just stuff you have to think. We always are very careful with how we handle our horses, but this makes it you even like double, twice-fold, fourfold, tenfold. You have to think. So this slide is important, clearly. Anytime either you're handling a horse or you're with friends or handling a horse, and you recognize those classic signs of tying up, you have to stop. The sooner you stop, the better, because you prevent muscle damage. The muscle has a great tendency to heal, but episode after episode after episode, they do sort of build on each other, and eventually there will be permanent damage. But tying up is an emergency, and as soon as it's recognized, or you even think that's what it is, then you should stop and call the vet. The other reason this is important is because it can look like other things, but the other things are also emergencies. So no matter what, get your vet out. What you're seeing could be colic. So what did we see in that first horse that maybe makes you think colic? That video.
The pawing.
Yeah. Could be laminitis when they stretch out. The classic sawhorse stance. If it was only a seahorse stance, right? Pneumonia can make horses take very small steps. Obviously, a severe lameness or fracture, and neurologic disease. So get your vet out and let the vet make the diagnosis. And then how do they do?
And to that point, though, you need to get rapid treatment to that horse, right?
Mm-hmm. So when you call your vet and you describe what's going on, and you might or you might not say, he's never tied up before, but a friend of mine said this maybe was what it is, so keep that in mind. Or he ties up, he's having another episode. So that's the kind of stuff you want to share with your vet, like he has or is not tied up before. But in the emergency situation, the vet will do a quick scan to make sure that tying up is actually your issue. They'll give some medications for pain and anxiety. And those, when you lower the horse's excitement and stress level, sometimes that helps them come out of it. So I know that for both tying up and for colic, which that thoroughbred did a lot too, the minute he blinked wrong, if I gave him some Rompin or xylazine, he would come out of it. He would not colic, he would not tie up. So for him, keeping him calm was really important. So I didn't put this in there, but now I wish I had. If you have a horse like that gets one or more conditions because they just blow up in their mind, then maybe a calming supplement is something that should be in his daily feed plan. Depending on how the horse's hydration level, the vet may need to give fluids, and they have a couple choices. They can put a stomach tube down, like when they are examining for colic and treating. It can give fluids that way, or they can give fluids through IV. And they'll help you get the horse comfortable and into a stall. It doesn't, I mean, stall rest is what happens next. But when I say stall, I mean, it depends on your situation. So, I mean, if you have a run out, if you have a situation where the horse can be alone or with a buddy that you trust to take care of him and not to pressure him, not to move him around. You know how some horses will move the other one around? This horse needs to stand still when he wants. He cannot be moved around. So talk to your vet, tell them what options you have, and they'll help you figure out the best one, at least for the next 24 to 48 hours, because that's how long the sporadic ER horse needs to not move. Once the horses begin to come down from the episode, is showing some that he's beginning to be more comfortable, then the vet will do a more thorough physical exam, draw the blood, and talk to you about the horse's history and try to figure out, why did the horse tie up today? That's very important, because what they're trying to do is, yes, like when he said, treat the horse right then, but also figure out, why did this horse do this today? Is he likely to do it again, or is this a one-off? The blood is not so much, I mean, when I draw blood, I would draw for everything as CBC, serum chemistry, but here in your chemistry, you're mostly looking for what's called CK and AST. They're two enzymes that are released when muscle cells lyse or explode because of damage. CK is released and found in the blood, I don't want to say immediately, but quickly. So 4 to 6 hours after an episode, it will appear. If the vet draws blood right when it happens, which they're usually not there right when it happens, but that could be a baseline, and then 4 to 6 hours after it happens, and maybe they'll leave equipment for you to draw blood, or they come back, and more than a twofold increase in CK is a diagnosis of tying up. And then the AST, I forget how long it takes, days or weeks for it to appear in the blood. And it's slower to come up, and it's also slower to go down. And so that's the one your vet will draw blood as your horse is healing to see when that AST goes back down to normal. And that's your sign that your horse can go back into work. And so the CK, though, ramps up really quickly, and it ramps down just as quickly. So it's possible to miss a CK spike if you didn't draw blood at the right time. So that's the emergency situation. And I've quoted, normal situation, like the second time your horse ties up, or not an emergency, and the vet has more time, like if the horse isn't so painful, maybe he began to tie up 10 or 15 minutes into exercise and you stopped and he didn't have a full-blown episode, but you call the vet and they had a colic, so they couldn't come out right away. They came out like maybe in the afternoon. Then they'll do a thorough physical exam right then. They'll take a complete history, sit down with you, talk about those risk factors, draw a full blood panel. And if now your horse is moving from sporadic to recurrent, then they might schedule more in-depth testing. They might do an exercise challenge test where it sounds awful, but it's not. It's just like what's the one in people, the stress test? No,
Yep.
part, yeah, where you're on the treadmill. So they might lunge a horse for 10 or 15 minutes. At the first sign of tying up, obviously you stop. The object is not to cause the horse to tie up, but to draw blood before you start and then draw blood 4 to 6 hours afterwards, even if you didn't see any signs. But just see if 10 to 15 minutes of lunging makes the horse have muscle damage and therefore muscle enzyme release.
So it's really the difference between the two, the before and then the after some degree of exercise, that is really going to give you that.
It is that, but there's also a range of high for CK, and even if the horse was on the high end and then you did the test and it wasn't twofold, if you're over the high end, then there's still a problem. So it doesn't have to be like a tire, like a low and a high. If you're out of the range, the normal range, you have the problem.
So I guess I should ask a question about the emergency situations. Can the horse die from tying up?
Yes. And I've seen that.
Okay.
The ones that die from tying up are the ones, after they lock up and park out, if they continue to get worse, they go down or become recumbent. And it's never a good sign when a horse becomes recumbent, no matter what your condition is. They're just not a species that can lay on the ground very long. Their bodies are too big and they way too much to press on the muscles, for one thing. And if you're already experiencing muscle damage and then you lay on the muscles, that's even worse. What you'll also see in horses that have a poor prognosis is the dark or the wine colored urine. And it's, while there may be a red tint to it, it's not blood that you're seeing. It's the related to blood, the myoglobin, the protein that's released when the muscle cells burst. That's a bad sign too.
Right. And then obviously you want to call a vet, but right now we're in situations where there aren't enough vets.
Yes.
Got any suggestions?
Know the signs really well so that at the very, very first of any of those signs, you recognize it. Always carry your phone with you, because you may need to stop. You may be out somewhere in the boonies riding a horse and he ties up. You can't ride him back. You'll kill him. So you may have to have somebody come get you with a trailer. Don't give a diuretic like Lasix, because what happens then is and people do this and they think they're helping flush the kidneys of the myoglobin, because when the myoglobin gets in the kidneys, it sort of overwhelms them, and these horses can die of kidney failure and liver failure. But if you give a diuretic to flush the kidneys, what are you doing? You're stripping fluid from the horse when he needs, at a time when he needs more fluid not less fluid. So don't suck him dry of fluid. He needs fluid. Offer him water. That would be some great advice.
Can you pour water over him? Will that help?
If the trigger factor is heat, absolutely. Cooling him down. It won't hurt. It's a myth that cold water causes tying up. If there's only one thing you learned from this talk today, it's that pouring water, hosing cold water, putting ice on horses does not make them tie up. We know now it's a internal process, has nothing to do with water being on the outer muscles whatsoever.
Okay.
So the thing that when it says the vet will administer meds for pain and anxiety, the medications they will give for pain are probably Banamine or some sort of non-steroidal, which you have to be careful with in the dehydrated horse because that also overwhelms the kidneys. And then for anxiety, it could be xylazine or Rompim. Acepromazine is a good one, but I wouldn't take it upon myself to give those. I would have my vet on the phone and say, here's where I am, here's what's happening. They say I can't get there, and you say, what do I do? So let a vet guide you in that moment.
Yeah, and hopefully you have a very good relationship with your veterinarian, and so they know the horse and they know the situation and they know you, so they can give you good advice.
Right, and I get that there's not a lot of equine vets right now, but doesn't mean that your homework at the end of this talk isn't to, if you don't have a good relationship with the vet, get one. Yeah. Have them come out before you have an emergency. Like anything else. I mean, whether it's your house or your car or I don't care what it is, your AC and furnace. Don't wait till your air conditioner is acting up to find the company that you like that can come out and service it, because you ain't going to get one then. They're all busy and they're going to take care of their customers first. So you want to be the client that your vet takes care of first because you have a relationship with them. Yeah. You pay your bill and you're on time and you have a clean horse and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more important every day.
Mm-hmm. Back to the normal situation on that right-hand column, keep in mind that if your horse is moved into the recurrent ER from the sporadic, because it's happened more than once, may require a referral to a veterinary teaching hospital, or at the very minimum, a referral center, because maybe your vet is ambulatory only, is one person, and is the one that has to go out and see horses and doesn't have time to do a more in-depth testing. Note this too. You're going to see differently online. This is where you don't believe everything on the internet. There is currently no genetic test for recurrent exertional rhabdomyolysis. There is for PSSM1, there is for HYPP, there is for glycogen branching enzyme deficiency, but not for this kind of tying up. So don't let people tell you there is.
So are there breeds that are more, I know you mentioned that kind of at the beginning, but more likely to tie up than others, like cold breeds versus?
So taking the PSSM and the myofibrillomyopathy and the malignant hyperthermias out of it and just talking about exertional rhabdomyolysis, sporadic ER, any age, breed, gender, anybody can tie up. My two little minis, I guarantee you would have tied up this weekend if I'd taken them to this show. because it's just everything, it's perfect storm, hot and humid, not fit for it, not getting the right diet, very hilly. So it just would have been a disaster. For the recurrent ER, thoroughbreds, standardbreds, and Arabians have most likely have an intrinsic defect in the way that their muscle cells handle calcium. In fact, I was going to put a picture in here for you, Wendy, because I know you have a degree in, your master's is in reproductive physiology, but you did work in like biomechanics, right?
Yep.
So they had to have talked about muscle tissue.
Oh, yeah.
Actin and myosin and the sarcolemma.
Yep.
Okay, so the defect is in the calcium channel in the sarcolemma. And it occurs after the action potential from the nerve. And I learned yesterday there's a difference between muscle contracture, which is tying up, versus muscle contraction. Who knew? But you asked about their breeds. So those 3 breeds have the intrinsic defect in their sarcolemma.
But it's not something we can genetically test for.
No, but you can figure out which lines of thoroughbreds, standardbreds, and Arabians have their predilection and either not breed them or not buy a horse in that line. Because there have been lots of research has been done in this field because so many high dollar racehorses have this. And you can't, in $1 billion industry like that, you can't have a horse that is, the favorite. And then he breezes 2 days before the race and he ties up and then he has to scratch. Or he loses the race because he ties up in the race. You just can't have that. And then you also can have the horse that ties up in training and then he can't even be entered in the races because he not only can't train and be conditioned and muscled up, but he has lost so much downtime because every time he has a tying up episode, it's at least 2 weeks before he can get back out on the track. So there's a research farm, and I forget where it is, that has 2 herds of thoroughbreds, one with tying up, and it's inherited as an autosomal dominant, I think. And their other line is thoroughbreds that don't have it. And they're able to do experiments with a treatment group that has it and a control group that's healthy and normal, and see what things affect it. And that's how they know. If you look on this right side, Joe Pagan did this work with Kentucky Equine Research. He found that chromium helped thoroughbreds not tie up. I put the DMG in parentheses because I've not found a single paper about this.
What's DMG?
Dimethylglycine.
Okay.
It's a very common, very inexpensive supplement. And for my thoroughbred, if he was on it, didn't matter how you managed him, he wouldn't tie up. If he had been on it when I put him in that herd with his buddy to get a group, he wouldn't have tied up. But I didn't. And but I did use him, my whole N of 1 experiment. I would put him on the DMG and he was fine, and then I would take him off, and then he'd have an episode. So after 2 or 3 times of that, I'm like, I'm pretty sure this DMG is what's keeping him from tying up. So I'm just going to leave him on it until he dies. I put amino acids on there because they're losing, there's muscle lysis, muscle breakdown when they have these episodes. So you need amino acids to build it back up. Vitamin E never hurts. It's an antioxidant that targets the free radicals in muscle tissue and nerve tissue. And then because these horses need to be on a low sugar starch diet and a high fat diet. Omega-3 fatty acids are your preferred fat because they're on the not inflammatory side. There's fats that are precursors to inflammatory molecules or cytokines, and then there is fats that are the precursors to not inflammatory biomarkers and cytokines. And so omega-3 fatty acids are the best fat to give. These horses they can have up to 20% of their diet in fat.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. It becomes unpalatable.
Yeah.
After that, and you have to add it slow. So that's several cups of like vegetable oil. And you don't start with that. You start with like a quarter cup. And for two reasons, you have to train their body how to absorb it and digest it and use it and store it. Three reasons. You have to get their body used to it so they don't colic with a strange substance. You know how the bacteria back there are like, new things, we don't like change. And then I had a third one. Oh, but just palatability. If you give it to them 2 cups at once, they're not going to even eat it because it's gross. It's the texture, Ugh. But if you start out small and mix it in their feed so they don't even know it, it's like the frog in the frying pan, He doesn't, if you start the frog in the pan when it's cool and you heat him up slowly, he doesn't know he's hot until he's like cooked, I guess. So start really slowly with fat in these guys.
So that's in our recurrent, the resume work gradually. No stall rest. That's really interesting. No stall rest in the recurrent.
Yeah, they found that with recurrent ER, with any kind of chronic tying up, so for the PSSM horses and the recurrent ER, better to just, back off, but keep going. They do not as well when you put them in stall rest. But with the sporadic one that just happened one time because of external environmental things, maybe out of your control, that's a one-off. Stall rest them, hay, no grain, and then increase their turnout, their free movement, and then add force movement, hand walking, tack walking, after the vet says it's okay. So after the vet's done a recheck and redrawn blood work. So do you see the resume training when BW is WNL?
Yes.
Do you know what that means?
No.
Well, you know what BW means?
No. Tell me.
Blood work.
Oh, okay.
When the enzymes that spiked and when they're back down, WNL means within normal limits.
Okay. Vet abbreviation speak.
Yeah. So when you get your vet records back from whatever and you see WNL, that's what it means. That's a good thing. Diet change. What else? We could talk more about diet, but maybe if people have questions at the end.
Okay.
So this is that thoroughbred showing in the ring. Every day he would go, oh, dressage again. Okay. But he would start out, is today the day we get to gallop? No.
Oh.
He was a horse that needed to gallop once a week though. Otherwise, watch out. So avoid excess stress. And that's like, a lot of this advice is more for the racehorse, but you can adapt it to your horse. So it was like, don't do exercise that's exciting. So don't, like interval training, probably not so great for these guys. So if you're an eventer with an off the track thoroughbred that's a recurrent ER guy, you're going to have to figure out how to condition him without doing interval training. One of the biggest exciting ways to exercise is holding back the horse. So if a group go galloping and you're like, I don't want to gallop, or I don't want to gallop as fast as them, and you're sort of fighting with your horse to stay back, that's actually worse for them than just going.
Yeah, it's the stress of not being with the crowd.
Yeah. And somewhere in here, I don't know if I kept it, but if they need turnout, and they need a buddy. Having a social life is really important to these guys to keep their stress level down. Back to the exercise, when you're going to work them, use really long warm-ups and try to include lots of stretching as well as breaks. So don't go for 20 minutes or 30 minutes working. Put a break in there every 10 or 15 minutes. Feed appropriately. So the research on the racehorses was like 10 pounds of grain a day, and these horses tied up. You could just make them tie up with just 10 pounds of grain. The thinking is that 10 pounds of grain made them so hot in the brain, they had brain, that that was all it took. And then just a little bit of exercise, and it's all she wrote. So unless you need to feed your horse grain to maintain weight, then a ration balancer or even a vitamin mineral supplement is ideal. And then you see the last one, number 7. Yep. Keep a journal. There's just no way to you have to help your vet diagnose tying up. And one of the ways you do that is to keep a journal. So unless you write down when your horse tied up and what the weather was and what you did and how his day was and how the week was before it, you're never going to figure out his triggers. If it's tying up or something else, maybe it is colic. You know, they really, I mean, I've been fooled. So you got to keep a journal. And this really is good advice for horses, even if they're healthy, but certainly any horse that has any sort of ain't doing right, ADR, we love our acronyms, write it down. I don't care if you write it down with a pen and paper, or you keep a digital journal, but you got to record things. And then resources, there's my minis. I found 3 really good ones for you. So in the Merck Veterinary Manual, which has been sort of a classic, they now have, well, it's online, yay.
Wow.
But, yeah, and free. They now have it divided into 2 sections. One's called For Pet Owners, and so it's a much shorter, no big words. And I tell people, and I even start there and wrap your head around it. And then when you understand, okay, got it. They have another, same side, just different pathway, called the professional version. And that's the really long version, breaks it out more, gives you more details. So read them sort of hand in hand. It turns out that the exertional myopathies section was written by Dr. Stephanie Wahlberg. She is the guru of muscle of myopathy in horses. And this means when you read stuff by her, the later it is dated, the better. I was going to put years in here. What I was thinking was try to read stuff no later than 5 years older. So like 2018 to 2023. If you read stuff from the 90s or the early 2000s, it will not be as up to date. So it won't be correct or accurate. So the later, the better. And then she was at Minnesota, where she had their equine neuromuscular disease laboratory. And I went there all the time to learn. Great library. That's where you sent your muscle biopsies. She's done, well, I don't know if she's probably done more than this, but she has a repository of 3,000 muscle biopsies.
Wow.
That's how she knows so much. She left Minnesota and went to Michigan State and built the same equine neuromuscular disease laboratory there. She's since retired, and now she consults for KER, Kentucky Equine Research. So a small portion of her equine neuromuscular laboratory library is on their site. But pretty much anything KER publishes about anything, exertional rhabdomyolysis or anything, it can be depended on for being accurate. They publish a ton of stuff. I just went to the Equine Science Society meeting in Dallas, and I think they had the most papers of anybody.
Wow.
Like they presented 20 papers over 3 days. So go there. They have a pretty good search engine. They have a library. They have proceedings. They have blog articles, and then all their research papers. So those are the 3 resources that I used, and I'd recommend that anyone who wants to read more about these conditions uses, because they can be trusted. And I think that was everything. Yeah. I will stop sharing now.
So, what's really interesting is that I met Dr. Joyce Harmon in 1990 at the Old Dominion 100-mile endurance ride when I was crewing for Bobby Lieberman, actually. She was 50. And we were at a check, and this horse fell over. And I went over to start doing T-touch on it. And this woman who was the attending vet came over, and she pumped 20 liters of fluids into the horse. And between the two of us, we saved the horse, and we met, and I've been dear friends with Joyce ever since.
Oh, that was Joyce.
Don't know what happened to the horse. He did get up.
Yeah. Well,
that was Joyce. Yeah. He was on the ground.
Well, you did help because you relieved his anxiety. And that's such a big part of this. So that her Western veterinary medical treatment and your, touch helped, saved his life probably. Yeah, I did a lot of ear work while he was down, and then all kinds of touches on his body, large move, like gentle touches. And the horse lived. It took us a couple of hours to get him up. Yeah, he was down. Yeah. That's amazing that you got him up, because when the longer they're down, the worse the prognosis. Yeah. Yep. So it was pretty scary, but it was, I've loaded many a horse into a trailer from endurance rides, competitive trail, 3-day eventing, steeplechase, polo ponies, because a lot of them are thoroughbreds. Right. Yeah. And with these really high temp conditions, I think it's really important for people to be aware, because the horses are going to be dehydrating. You might not realize it. People too, we all have to think about the stress that we're under with these higher temps that are happening, and especially then you add humidity. This actually happens in people too. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm no expert in it, but people can get rhabdomyolysis. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Interesting. I certainly have had my share of pretty bad cramps, but I wouldn't say I was tying up. Yeah, there is a difference between cramping and Charlie horses and tying up. Yeah, for sure. Did we get any questions? I don't think so. I'm okay. Let me. Oh, did we get any questions? No. I know I'm a good speaker. Christine said my horse did test positive in the exercise challenge test, probably because she was on a calcium supplement at the time. She tied up when I ran out of that supplement and has been doing really well since I added a new calcium supplement. Interestingly enough, calcium supplements are not the way to go, because it's having too much calcium that is the problem. So unless your veterinarian has instructed you to be on a calcium supplement, that's not one of the suggestions for tying up. Okay, so let's see. So that person should talk to her veterinarian and ask them. Okay, people have put questions in chat. I'm trying to find it. So, Kaylee, I don't see your question. Oh, wait, somebody's. Kathy Vincent would. I know Kathy Vincent.
Yeah, but she can't talk because the maximum number of presenters have been reached. So Kathy, can you type your question in? I'm learning the whole new chat system here, and I don't know why there's a Q&A, but Kylie, I don't see your question. Maybe you can, I don't know where it is. What's the implication of body work and how soon and what types and how often and what should you avoid?
Well, I would avoid massage and anything deep in an acute situation while they're painful. What Wendy did was more affecting the brain of the horse to relax him, because you're not going to be able massaging the hard cramped tissue at the time of the event is not going to help it uncramp. It's a electrolyte ion thing. It's a calcium molecule issue, and so someone putting hands on at that moment is only going to be painful to the horse and potentially cause more muscle damage, because the muscle can't relax until the calcium goes back to where it came from. It's the channels are messed up. But after a couple days, your bodywork person should be astute enough to know that when they put their hands on, the horse enjoys it and it's helpful, or it's too soon, not yet. So it might be a week or two before a person can go in there. And even then, I would use a lighter touch than normal.
Kaylee's asking if there's a list of the breeds. Where do you find a list of lines of risk for a breed? I don't know that they actually have that information, and probably it's one of those.
It's one of those breed protection things. Nobody will tell you that.
Yeah.
They just, I mean, look at Impressive with HYPP. That was a secret for so long, and the only reason it got out was because a veterinarian accidentally said the horse's name. That's the only reason we know now.
Yeah, there's a comment that kind of relates to that. Does PSSM1 also cause the same type of tying up?
Yeah, PSSM1 causes tying up in quarter horses, and that's the one that there is a genetic test for. So it's really important when your horse shows any of these signs to figure out which kind of muscle problem he has, because they're all treated a little bit differently. Like some of them you want to stall rest, like we pointed out, and some you don't. Some you never want to stall rest because it only makes it worse. So it's really important to figure out, is my horse is tying up, but does he have sporadic or recurrent? And if he's a chronic tire upper, I think I'm making up words now. Is it this recurrent exertional rhabdomyolysis that's a calcium problem, or is it PSSM type 1 that is a glycogen storage problem? You have to know those things.
So it could look similar but be a different cause.
PSSM1, exactly. PSSM2 now doesn't look like tying up. It looks like exercise intolerance. It's the lack of impulsion, and the horse that just won't maintain his canter, and he has trouble with his leads, and it's a very vague hind end. Just, he's not lame, he's not neurologic, he just won't go right.
Okay. Okay, so the calcium was recommended for ARIA, recommended by a vet for feed company, includes most of what you recommended. So, okay, such as amino acids. And the woman with the calcium that did the calcium supplement, so it sounds like there was a lot of other things in there besides calcium, and it has made a huge difference in the muscle tone to her mare.
Okay.
Kathy is asking, has a PSSM 2-horse tied up to, she has a PSSM 2-horse that's tied up 2 to 3 times acutely. Can these horses have mini tying up incidences, not wanting to go forward heavy on the forehand?
Yeah, PSSM 2 horses can tie up more likely in quarter horses than warmbloods, but I think it's been seen. It's just that PSSM 1 in quarter horses tying up is still the typical presentation.
Okay. And apparently, Gypsy Vanners can test positive for PSSM1, but fortunately has not tied up. And apparently Dr. Valberg has a list of breeds.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, she has a list of breeds, but not a list of lines in the breeds.
Lines.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And certainly, that was an Arab that I was dealing with at the Old Dominion 100-mile endurance ride.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Does anybody else have any more questions? I think we're starting to figure out how to get the questions in, which is great. It's like,
and people are figuring out how to use the resources and which ones, the Merck Vet Manual, anything by Dr. Valberg, and anything KER puts out, or Dr. Joe Pagan.
Okay. Who's Dr. Joe Pagan?
He's the guy that is with Kentucky Equine Research, KER.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. He's
all right. Well, thank you, Dr. Gray, Lydia, for once again providing us with a wealth of information. I always learn something, and now I can say, maybe I can say that name. You want to say it one more time?
Rhabdomyolysis. Rhabdomyolysis.
Rhabdomyolysis. I do have one quick question. What is azoturia something? What was that definition?
Azoturia.
That's the word I read.
So let's break it down. So urea means in the urine, and azo means nitrogen.
Oh, okay.
So, and nitrogen is protein. Yeah. So, so back in the day, they were like, all they knew before we had good diagnostics, like histopathology, looking at muscle cells under the microscope, all they knew was that they could run a little strip and say, hey, there's nitrogen in the urine. So they're like, this, therefore, this disease is azoturia.
Right.
That's all they know.
Well, and it's, as we keep learning and everything, we see that names change, certainly, like in plant world.
The bacteria.
Yeah. Yeah. Fortunately, we don't have to deal with this. All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And thank you, Dr. Lydia, for being a presenter tonight, and our inaugural one on Kartra. This webinar will be available for 7 days to all of you that signed up. I will find out how all that works, and I think you'll get an email. So hopefully it'll all work out just fine. Thanks a lot. Have a great night.